Hi everybody, welcome back. I have some more updates with you regarding the Sézane situation. If you didn't see my last video, we talked all about the updates coming to the brand, the big rebrand they've been planning on August 23rd, and we have some new information on this directly from Morgane herself. So I thought I would share that with you today in case you haven't seen it yet. And actually, I think you'll be surprised by what she has said. It's a little bit different to what I expected from the rebrand, and I'm intrigued, and I would love to hear your thoughts once again. So a couple of things have happened today. First off, there is a new article out on Vogue Business with an interview with Morgane herself talking about the changes, and we will go over that now. Sézane has also released the first promotional images of their new upcoming collection that will be dropping, I believe, August 23rd. On Instagram they dropped these. They have also hinted at the first new items in this new rebrand, this new collection, which are going to be bags and scarves, and we'll talk about and I'll show you images of those later. Let's start with the article though, because I think this is the juiciest bit. This is the bit that I saw that really grabbed my attention. Now, the beginning of the article is really talking about what we know already. It's about how Sézane came to be in the early 2000s on eBay, selling vintage items, eventually becoming Sézane as we know it in 2013. And what's interesting is Morgane says that it really happened without much foresight, without much planning on her part. She said what's very interesting is that there has never been a business plan or a strategy. It's just this crazy limitless energy I have. I thought this was an interesting quote from Morgane. On one hand, I can see it. She was in her early 20s when she started this kind of vintage reselling, and then by her late 20s, Sézane, as we know it today, became a brand, and it did expand and grow extremely rapidly for a fashion brand. And I can imagine it did feel, to a certain extent, like a ball that just kept on rolling and growing bigger and bigger and bigger without too much direction and ability to control the way it went. On the other hand, the slightly more skeptical side of me kind of feels like this is her passing blame for Sézane's kind of downfall into a more of a fast fashion brand. She's kind of saying, well, I didn't have control over how it went. It grew too rapidly for me to really decide which way to take the brand. And I don't know how I feel about that, but it was interesting nonetheless. The second half of the article is where things get really interesting and actually not what any of us, I don't think, expected from this rebrand. So the big headline from this article is her saying that the new Sézane will be slower and more intentional. She says, in quotes, "I decided to stop the rhythm. I really said, okay, we are going to stop the growth." Then the article writes that new items will be released on a monthly cadence, but more edited. And this is quite shocking to all of us, I think. I think all of us were expecting this rebrand to be a continuation of the path they've been going down for the last few years, this natural winding path, almost inevitable path when you put in private equity and things like that, to fast fashion, to a bigger, more generic mass market brand. Cheap products, you know, still keeping somewhat of their same reputation for high quality materials and kind of mid-range price points, but really trying to drive to the mass market and really trying to promote the brand and make it as big as possible. And she's kind of contradicting this, right? She's totally contradicting this. She's saying, no, I want to stop the growth. I want to pull back. I want to pause. I want to reflect. I want things to be slower and more intentional, which I think is really interesting. And I think has got a lot of people on two sides of the fence still. A lot of people, I've seen the early reactions to this saying, fantastic, this is what I want to hear. This is like a return to the old Sézane. This is exactly what we want from the brand, particularly in the Facebook groups. I've seen reactions like this. On the other hand, I've seen a lot of more skeptical responses to this saying, does this mean she just wants to put prices up and charge more for the same products? Is she trying to market the brand actually as a more luxury brand with higher price points? Yes, fewer items, but charging a lot more for actually kind of the same materials, the same quality of clothing that they're producing now. And the article, rightly so, has pointed out that this is a risky move for a brand that is currently doing so well and achieving so much success. Although a few of us have been quite critical, if you look at the picture as a whole, you cannot deny the success of Sézane over the last few years. Everywhere I go now, people are wearing Sézane, whether that's online or in person. So actually making a change and taking a new path is a risk from a business sense, especially because there is private equity involved. The interviewer points this out to Morgane directly and asks her, why mess with something that works? Her response, It's a reflection of me growing up. I feel like I've been in school for 20 years and now I'm ready to actually launch Sézane with awareness and intention. Before, the story was so spontaneous and instinctive and organic and without any time or even desire to step back and really look at it and think about it. So again, she's reiterating this narrative that before now she's never really had time long enough to stop and think about the direction of the brand, and it's been a snowball that's been growing at an ever rapid rate, and she really hasn't had the chance to slow down and think about what she wants to do with the brand up until now. The article continues, she wants to push herself to be better in a market that's rife with competition and caters to a fickle customer. I really want to improve each day, says Sézalory. It's not changing everything, it's choosing better, creating better, and giving myself and the team the resources and the time. So we needed to slow down and organise things differently. I have a few thoughts on this. My first reaction is almost pleasant surprise. Again, I'm reiterating, I really thought Sézane was going one way and one way only, and that was to a more mass market, generic, fast fashion approach. And this seems to be a total 180 on that. It seems to be a slowing down. It seems to be a more curated, more thoughtful approach to dropping new clothing, dropping new releases, almost to the days of early Sézane where they would drop things once a month rather than 2 or 3 times a week. What I really think Morgane's trying to do here is reposition Sézane slightly in the market as a more mid-luxury brand. Mid-luxury brands are doing so well at the moment, especially with the decline in the sales from the true very high-end luxury brands like Louis Vuitton and Chanel. The Totems of the world are doing incredibly well, and I think that's where she wants to take Sézane personally. She wants Sézane to be less of a J. Crew, less of an Anthropologie, more of a Totem, more of a Kate, maybe not quite that expensive, but those kinds of luxury feeling brands where when you buy from them, you really feel like you're buying an investment piece, something that is timeless, something that is going to last for many years because it's made of high quality materials, because the construction of the garment is strong, and it has that timeless, not trendy appeal. Now, despite Sézane's obvious success, that mid-market bracket that they currently sit in, the Sézanes, the Anthropologies, the J. Crews, the Madewells of the world, is very competitive. There are so many of those brands these days, and so many continue to pop up every single day that it is hard to stand out, especially as they've transitioned away from the very feminine, floaty aesthetic that once made them more unique into this kind of generic style. Their clothes have started to look very similar to the clothes of their competitor brands like Madewell and like J. Crew. And as Morgane said herself, the customer is very fickle. So one minute we might love Sézane, we might be die-hard Sézane stans, and the next minute there might be a new it brand in that mid-range market that we all start to flock to. Now, one of the other factors that isn't mentioned in the article, but I think might be a persuading factor in this decision from taking Sézane down the path, the slippery slope to fast fashion, and actually stopping it and pulling it back up and changing to this more luxury, timeless, slower, more expensive brand, are the new laws imposed this year by the French government when it comes to the promotion and sale of ultra fast fashion. Now, if you're not sure what these laws are, I will leave some more information in the description box, some links to some articles about it. But essentially, the French government have imposed some of the strictest laws on the promotion and the sale of ultra fast fashion products. They are really trying to crack down on the promotion of fast fashion, put laws in place to prevent companies from doing this, including the use of influencers. So I believe influencing people to buy fast fashion, at least now in France, has to come with certain disclaimers if it's not banned entirely. And I think this is really interesting because, as we know, Sézane uses the influencer model to market their products extensively. Almost everyone is promoting Sézane on Instagram these days, whether they have 1,000 followers or 1 million followers. So it's really interesting that these changes have started to happen right as these laws in France have started to be put in place. Now, obviously, Sézane is not an ultra fast fashion brand. They're not even close to the Sheins and the Temus of the world where these laws really apply. But most likely what's happened is that Morgane and the team at Sézane have seen the writing on the wall. They've seen that a fast fashion approach is probably not one that is the smartest in today's economy, in today's climate landscape, both in terms of the laws that are being put in place by the French government, but also just the general zeitgeist, the general opinion when it comes to fast fashion brands and the climate crisis. And that will only worsen and become more apparent over the next 5-10 years. And they've obviously seen the criticism from their own customers as well of their own products, the increase in the drops, the decrease in the quality. They'll have seen all of that feedback, and they're obviously deciding to take it on board now before it's too late, which I do think is an incredibly smart business move. I think this is the right business move for her to take. It's just an interesting one as a consumer, because where does this leave us? I think what we can expect from the brand moving forward is a slower approach, as Morgane says. It is also higher prices, inevitably. If they are going to be producing less garments overall, going to be releasing on a monthly basis rather than a twice weekly basis, they have to make the same amount of money, especially as private equity is involved and has a stake. So it will be higher prices. I'll be interested to see how much higher they'll be charging, but no doubt it will be higher prices. And I also think it will be a more minimalistic style, as I predicted in the last video. They're already discontinuing so many products that kind of made them famous. The Paula babies, I believe, are gone. The checkered lining on the Clyde and on the Carter and on the Bobby is no more. And in the last video, I said I really couldn't understand why they would do that, but I think I really understand now with this rebrand. They are going for a more almost old money, I hate to say it, but almost old money, luxury aesthetic. Minimal, simple, well-crafted, high-quality materials, organic materials I think were mentioned, but pulling back on those feminine details, on those almost like personality pieces, I call them. I think this is actually already really apparent, particularly in their accessories departments. If you look at the shoe selection on the Sézane website currently, pre-rebrand, if you look at the belt selection and the bag selection, these sections used to be full of colour and pattern and interesting design, especially the belts. Do you remember a few years ago, Sézane belts were so different? I remember saying it myself in so many videos, you cannot find Sézane-like belts at other brands. They were unique, they were pretty, they were statement, and they were colourful. And the same could be said for many of their shoe styles and many of their bags. Whereas these days, if you look at those sections on their website, you will see neutral tones, you will see simple designs, minimal designs, and not much else. Very little colour, very little pattern, very little embroidery or texture. It's really just a sea of black and brown and other neutrals, the odd piece of suede, a little bit of gold detail, and nothing more. It looks much more comparable to a Totem, to a Kate, to a brand like the Row, even though we're talking about different price points here, to a brand like the Row, or even the mid-range high street brands like Massimo Dutti, COS and Arquette. So although I'm optimistic about the slowing down of the drops, the releases, and the emphasis on high quality materials and timeless designs, I do think that's overall a positive change, and I'm excited to see it play out. I do think for those of us that loved the feminine details, the intricate details, the embroidery, the texture, the patterns, the colour of Sézane that once was, I think we are going to be quite disappointed by these changes. So let's talk about the first promotional images which have gone live today. Now the article makes mention of these. It says the first images from the new brand campaign go live today, revealing the direction in which Morgane is taking the brand. More bold, more confident, sharper, and taking up more space. Oversized silhouettes basically. Soft lines and curves now coexist with angled shoulders and straight collars. So what was once soft lines and curves, the femininity of old Sézane, now coexists with angled shoulders and straight collars. So more of these Scandinavian influences, more of these minimalistic, almost 90s style designs, oversized silhouettes, straight collars, angled shoulders are going to be taking up a bigger proportion of their collection. I'm not surprised at all. The first items to be released will be silk scarves and canvas bags, with the full collection to drop later this month. Right, so let's talk about these silk scarves and canvas bags. So these are actually going to be dropping on Wednesday the 12th, I believe, this coming Wednesday. They are the first two items from the new Sézane. So there are some images of these on their Instagram. I'll put the images on screen as well. So it says, every new chapter begins with a first page. On Wednesday, August 12th, a new line of silk scarves and canvas bags offers a glimpse of what's to come before the full story begins on August 23rd. So you can see that they have these bigger silk scarves that are going to be dropping, and then these very plain looking canvas bags. And what initially strikes me about these is they are definitely quite far from the old Sézane stylistically. The scarves very much look like totem scarves. They very much look like Hermes scarves, the rose scarves. Again, all of those brands we've been mentioning, brands that I think they're trying to align themselves with. And then the canvas bags are, in my opinion, very disappointing, very boring. They are plain, they are white and black, monochrome, and they very much look like the Hermes garden party bag that I think has been quite popular recently. They also look like, again, I'm repeating myself, but they look like they could be straight from the Totem website or the Row. They also, I think, look like a bag that the Row make. Very old money, very quiet luxury, even though I feel like we've moved past those terms. Very minimalistic and simple, and I guess timeless. It looks like the bag will also be coming in a brown version as well as the white and black. I can't say I'm too excited by these releases. I mean, I'm still keeping an open mind about what will drop later down the line, but from the few images that they've released some kind of trench coats as well. You can see this image with what looks like maybe a wool jacket, oversized knit, and the canvas bag. You've got this big, very oversized, chunky brown knit, so definitely playing into those neutrals, although it is paired with a big blue suede clutch. I'll be interested to see if that's Sézane. But yeah, like classic, like, you know, that Instagram look. Tailored brown trousers, big chunky brown knit. Brown is definitely the neutral of choice at the moment with the silk scarf. Same kind of vibe, the canvas bags, more canvas bags. You've got the suede wool still there, with some jeans and a tee, and again another trench coat with a plain lining. So it looks to be, as I suspected, very minimalistic, very simple, less feminine. And then the final slide they have on their Instagram stories at the moment is the agenda for autumn winter 26. So on the 12th of August, on Wednesday, we'll be having the first preview of the scarves and the bags. And then the next chapter begins on the 18th of August. I think that's when they're doing the new website. So there'll be a new website and the new label sort of, and the new branding logo officially launches. The third installment will be the solidarity call on the 21st of August. I'm not sure what that is. Is that to do with their charity? And then finally on the 23rd of August, we will have the full autumn collection drop on the website. So I feel like we know a lot more than we did even a few days ago when I filmed the first video. Some good, some bad. I'm still trying to keep an open mind. I'm a little bit more optimistic, I guess, than I was in the first video, because I do think this is at least a swerve in a different direction as opposed to the ultra fast fashion route that they were going down. But I can't lie, I'm a little bit sad about the lack of feminine clothing, the lack of colour and pattern in the new releases. But let me know what you think. I've seen mixed reviews so far. Are you happy about these changes? Are you apprehensive about the price point moving up a notch? Because I do think it will. About the lack of femininity in the styles, or do you like this more androgynous vibe that they're building up to? I would love to hear your thoughts. As always, you had so many good comments in the last video I posted last week. So let me know what you think now we've had this new information. I hope you're all doing really well. And if there's any more updates, I will film another video. But if not, I guess I will see you. I'll probably do a video once the full autumn collection releases on the 23rd, and we will see what my final thoughts are. But let me know, as always, how you're doing, and I'll see you very soon in my next video. Bye.